Let me ask you guys one question. Are you ready to change your life? Yeah. Are you ready to take your life for what it is and make a difference by committing to something serious? Yeah. Then you, my friend, have come to the right place. Let's get started with our 30-day Java challenge. Yeah. That doesn't sound fun. What were you expecting?
I was expecting like extreme yoga and meditation, or like how to get ladies, or how to pay my bills on time at least.
I don't know any of those things.
Fine, I guess 30 days of Java will just have to do.
All right, well, in that case, let's get started. Are you guys ready?
I'm ready.
I'm not talking to you anymore. I'm talking to these guys.
Oh, sorry.
All right, let's get started. All right, so where do we even start with this? Well, if you guys are new to development, then this is going to be a great series. But even if you are not new to development, this is also going to be a good series because I am designing this as a hands-on series. So you're going to be coding along with me. Now, if you look at what I'm looking at right now, I'm just looking at a search for Java. And you can see on the side, it's a general purpose programming language that is class-based, object-oriented, and designed to have as few implementation dependencies as possible. So what I want to do in this video is I want to explore what some of those things mean, and we're going to get started with Java. And at least for the first few days of this, we're going to focus on getting up to speed with some of the basics, getting on the same page, but the entire time it's designed to be exploratory. So someone who actually inspired me to do this video was a series I watched on YouTube, 30 Days of Yoga by Yoga with Adriene. And she always says, find what feels good. And I want you guys to do the same thing with programming. Now, you do want to stretch yourself because you want to learn new things. But this should always be in a way that is fun and exciting to you. So what we might be doing here on video is not necessarily where you need to stop. I encourage you to take that extra step to go learn things on your own. So where do we even start? First thing is getting an IDE. So there's two big IDEs with Java. The first one is NetBeans. So you can go this route, and the other big one is Eclipse. Now, I personally have experience in Eclipse. I have not used NetBeans, or at least not very much. I don't think I've ever used it. But the purpose of the IDE is to write Java code. It's like the surrounding environment. So the code is going to be the same whether you're using NetBeans or whether you're using Eclipse. It should not matter. Now, you can pick which one you like, and you can still follow along with this series. There might be situations where a particular button or a particular feature is in a different spot. And in that situation, yeah, you might just want to get the IDE that I am using. So I'm going to be using Eclipse. Now, this is available on multiple operating systems. So I personally am on Mac, but again, most of the stuff is going to be the same. So what we're going to do is we're going to download Eclipse. Now, I actually already have Eclipse up on my machine, so I don't actually have to go through this process. But if you are watching this video, then I'm going to need you to go through that process so you can get on the same page with me. But I don't see a purpose in me uninstalling everything and pretending like I'm brand new to this. So let's just open up Eclipse. You will want to, I'm just making sure I wasn't sharing any private documents. You will want to make sure you get Eclipse open and can get to, if it loads, get to the opening screen. Now, I have a project in here already from earlier on, and that's fine, but we're not gonna need that. So what I'm actually gonna do is I'm just going to right click and we're just going to delete it. Just say goodbye. Yes, and you can also delete it from the disk. So if you do that, it's going to remove the actual files. If you don't check that, it's just going to delete it from you're not gonna see it in the IDE here anymore, and you'd have to import it. So we'll just delete it from disk. Oh crap, that had some important stuff in it. No, I'm just kidding, we're good. So we're going to click create a project, and you can look through some of the stuff in here if you want. We'll go into Java and select Java project, and then we'll go next. And you can come up with a cool project name if you have something in mind, but I'm honestly just gonna be going through some simple examples here, so I'll usually just come up with some silly name, and then if I end up coming up with a project idea, then I'll use that for the project name when I create a project. But for now, I'll just go with My Sweet Program. And then we'll just click finish. I don't think you have to go to next or anything. And this module thing, just click don't create. So modules is just essentially a way to organize files, but we don't really need that right now. So now this perspective thing, this is talking about the layout of our IDE Eclipse. So you can just click open perspective if you want. And now things are a little tiny here, so just follow along with my voice. Open up My Sweet Program there, and you can right click source and say new class. So everything inside of Java is structured inside of classes. For the very first class we create, we will want to check this public static void main string args. And that is actually the signature for where our application is going to start. So since this is the first file, we'll definitely want to have that starting point in this file. Now, as for what to name this file, doesn't really matter for now anyways. Let's see if we can name it the same thing. Finished. All right, so this is My Sweet Program, and we have a class My Sweet Program with one method. So this thing's a method, and if you guys are new or not new, if you're experienced with Java and all this is like review, we're gonna get into some more stuff soon, but I just wanna make sure everybody gets on the same page in these first couple days. So hopefully you'll go through these as well, go through the exercises and help get everyone on the same page. Oops, sorry, I'm bumping my microphone. Okay, now the very first thing that I want you guys to do is to say sys out and hold Control, Shift, and don't know. Oh, there we go. Now there are some shortcuts that are available to you that'll make your life a lot easier. So the very first thing you might want to do is just output to the console. We're working with a console application. Later on down the road, we'll probably get into some graphical applications or some web applications. But again, we're just starting with the basics here. But you're gonna wanna know this either way. So sys out, and I'm on a Mac, and I hold Control space, and that's going to expand out to system.out.println. Now, if you're on Windows, I don't have Windows, I'm sorry. Just try Alt or whatever other buttons there are. Just press one of the bottom left hand keys and press space. Maybe it is Control, I don't know. So that's how you do that. And this is where you put stuff to go in the console. So the very first thing is just to do a hello world, which is like the convention just to do for your first application. And then you can hit the little play button up here and it shows up down here in the console. Woo! And that's it, guys. Thank you for watching this 30-day challenge. You are now a Java master. Now, if you go over to youtube.com/Caleb the Video Maker 2, which is my URL, but my actual username is just Caleb Curry. And then you go into playlists and turn off all that annoying audio. And then you can go into created playlists. There should be one in here for Java. So we got this Java tutorials, and you can watch them like that or just view full playlist. And here you can see them all like so. And here are some of the big things I covered in this series. This is a pretty basic series, so if you have any issues with anything I'm talking about in this hands-on version, you can go back to the series and watch whichever one you're struggling with. And basically what I want to do is I want to crash course this series as quickly as possible. So covering all the basic fundamentals so we can all get up to speed and be intermediate level Java developers. So the very first thing is I introduced Java, I did the installation in Hello World, so we already did that. Then we understood the Java foundations, and that's what I'm going to talk about now. So in Eclipse, here's what you need to know. You need to understand that we have the project, which is right here, My Sweet Program. Then we have a file in here, mysweetprogram.java. .java, that's just the file extension, and all of our Java files are going to have that extension. Inside of this, we have a class, and then we have what's known as a method. Anytime you do the 2 forward slashes, that's just a comment. And yeah, this is how we output to the console. And you can basically, when you build out more complex classes, you're going to have a lot of different methods inside of those classes. So we could go down here and create another method, and we'll do that shortly. But for now, all you have to worry about is this main method. And it has this special name, main. The technical term in computer science for a name of something is an identifier. So the identifier for this method is main. And this right here, this void, this is known as the return type. So lots of information here, and I don't really know what level of difficulty to make this, so I'm just gonna give this information just in case you don't know it. And if you do know it, then just hang along, we'll get up to speed shortly. So this is the return type, and basically void means nothing. So it's saying when this method is done, it's not gonna give anything back. You can change this to a different type to say, hey, we're gonna return a number, we're gonna do some calculation, or we're gonna return some string, such as hello world in quotes there. Now public, this is known as an access modifier. It basically says where this method is available. Public means it's pretty much available everywhere. So if you're inside of another class, you can access this method. Now static, that one's a little bit more advanced if you're just starting out, but basically that means we don't have to create an object to invoke this method. And we'll get into that when we talk about OOP and IOOP. I'm just kidding. All right, so the next thing, arguments and parameters. So this here, this is known as a parameter. So anytime we have a method declaration, so this is a method, and we have something in parentheses here, it's known as a parameter. When we create our own methods, we'll want to create parameters because they allow us to give input to the methods. And you could think of a method just as like this box that takes input and gives output. The parameter, that's what stores the input. The return type, that describes the output. So yeah, parameter. Now argument, a very similar word, is the actual data we pass in. So in this situation, we can pass in a string array of keywords or whatever we wanted to do. So that's like the basics. Now we talked about input, or we talked about output using sysout. Input in Java is unfortunately a little bit more complicated. Honestly, I can never remember the syntax. I'm not even gonna pretend to, but we'll just try. So we'll say scanner. Yeah, that didn't work. Okay, so scanner, yeah, java.util, and that imported java.util.scanner. What else do we got? We'll call it S scanner. Maybe that works. Oh, and then we have to say where the data is coming from. So I think we can just use input stream. Now, guys, I'm teaching you how to be a real developer. You think I actually know this stuff? No. I don't want to use this buffered reader class. Meh. I don't want this traditional technique introduced in JDK 1.0, which is like older than my grandma. That's really mean. You're not old, grandma, I love you. So we're gonna go with this one, which is the better way to do it. And man, you need to fix your indentation, man. Gross, making me nauseous. All right, so then what we'll do is we'll just replace that with this. So I was getting pretty close. We have to create a scanner object, this is the syntax to do that. So what I had earlier was, I'll type it out real quick. I had scanner S, like this. And this value here, it's the identifier. We can choose what to put there. So it's equally valid to use in instead of S. So you could switch this to S, except they're using S there. So we'll just go with in and S. All right, let's see. So that is how you do input. So how exactly does this work? Well, when the program executes, it's gonna go line by line. So it starts line 6, it's gonna do an output, which is hello world. Then it's gonna go down to line 8 here. It's gonna create a new scanner object from system.in, which describes the console input there. Then it's going to do in.nextLine, which is going to take a line from the console and store it in this variable S. So what we can do is we can say sysout, and we can just output S. All right, so let's run it, see what we get. Okay, so we got hello world, and it doesn't actually say anything, so we might not know what to do, but because we have access to the code, we can see what to do. But if you're creating an application for someone else to use, we'll probably want to tell them to put something. So like, hey, we're expecting your name, or we're expecting something. But we'll just test that. We'll say, this is the hardest part, figuring out what to put in the console. I'll just put my favorite restaurant, Chipotle. And you can see it pasted back out to me. So why exactly is it doing that? Well, because it scanned my input using in.nextLine, and that's stored in this variable S. And then all we did with that is we just outputted it using system.out.println. So nothing too crazy, and seriously, it's pretty pathetic that I couldn't even remember how to do this syntax, but most of the time I'm not getting user input, and when I do, I'll just copy that and paste it, and then I'll just reuse it over and over again without actually memorizing it. But now that I have to do it on camera, that hurts. So I'm going to make sure I memorize that syntax in upcoming videos. You guys better be keeping me accountable. I don't think memorizing syntax is like the most important thing to do. It's more important to understand how it works, but it definitely does add value to your skills. Speaking of Chipotle, sponsored by. So what is next? Well, let's take a look at that other series. And man, I'm saving you guys so much time. You don't gotta go watch all these and watch all the advertisements and sponsorships. You guys just consume this stuff. It's way better. So we crash course input and output. And the next thing is variables. We're actually working with variables now, even if you don't realize it. This is a variable. And each variable has a data type. In this case, it's type string. So there's a lot of different other data types, and you can just honestly just look up Java data types. And yeah, just go to the first thing. You know, Geeks for Geeks is pretty good. I don't know much about Java Point. And you can see some of the data types here. And we are using string, which is not on this list. And I'm going to explain why in just a minute. These here are known as primitives. So they're like, oh my gosh, don't want you to show me notifications. Jeez. All right. So these are known as primitives. They're kind of like the built-in types. They're like the essential Lego pieces to build our crazy, awesome applications. But then there are also like custom types, which I actually talk about in primitives and objects. So a string, when we're doing this, we're actually using this string class and we're creating an object of type string. So it kind of looks like this. We have a class. Let me make this a comment so you guys don't have to worry about the colors. We have a class, and this becomes an object. So this little arrow thing, this is called instantiation or instantiating. It's a really hot word, so make sure you use it. And you can do this multiple times. So you can do another instantiation into another object. So for example, I can make another string and just put, hey. So this is a string object, so it's of type string. So these are not primitives. The primitives are the most basic, and objects work a little bit differently, and the way we create them is differently. So you'll often see it similar to this here, where we have this new keyword followed by the type. But string has a simpler way of doing it, but you might see this as well. New string, and then this is put in parentheses. So this is how you would create a string object, which gets assigned to the variable t. When you do this new string, this is called invoking the constructor. So it's a special method in this string class that is used to create a new string object. So cool. Let's get rid of all of these notes because we're not going to need those. And let's get rid of this string here and just stick with what we just had. All right, so you got the basics of primitives and objects. The next thing is variable declaration and initialization. So if you take a variable, and I'll give it a primitive variable example. So int x, we assign it the value 5. Well, there's actually, we can go ahead and use this later on. So for example, I can output the value 5. Let's get rid of or comment out these scanners here. So what's going to happen is we're going to get the value 5 in the console there. What we can do is we can actually break this out into 2 steps. So right now this is being declared and initialized. We can split this out into int x. Let me comment out the original one because you can't re-declare a variable, so you have to either get rid of that line or comment it out. And what we can do is we can assign it a value such as 5. So this is another way how you can break these steps up into their individual components. Now this should work exactly the same way. We get the value 5. Awesome. And the next thing in here is, we already kind of talked about primitive data types and scanner input. So what we would logically do now is go into some more details with the different data types. The only other thing, I wanted to make sure you guys get a little bit more on the primitive data types. So just looking up the data types, you can see the big ones right here. I just wanted to explain what each one is and which ones you should use. So the very first thing you should know is Boolean. And you should know Boolean whether you're in Java or a database developer or whatever, because this is going to be everywhere. And it's literally a thing that can either be true or false. So that's it, right? Like, she loves me, true or false. It's not maybe. Char or car, however you want to pronounce this will contain 1 character. So let me show you an example of that real quick. Char, T, and we can just assign it some character. And this is going to be in single quotes. So like that. And we'll just go T, we can put some character in there. And you can use that variable somewhere, such as in this print line. Run that, make sure you save, and we get a T. And it has nothing to do with the name, right? I could make it whatever I wanted as long as it matches. Right there. Run that now, save, and you can see it still comes out as T. That's because that's what that value is. You can only put like 1 thing in there, so like if you do this, it's gonna complain, because that's not a character. That's a string. When you put multiple characters together, you get a string, such as right here. This is a string, and those are surrounded by double quotes. So single quotes and double quotes. Now, an important piece of wisdom I got to tell you guys. I don't know if it's the case with Eclipse. Maybe it is. I guess it just depends on the IDE and the everything else. But sometimes you will get a character that resembles these, but they're not the same thing. So it's like a little tilted, and you'll see it in like Microsoft Word or other applications. And sometimes you'll copy and paste code that has that, and it's not going to work, and you're not going to get a clear understanding why, because it looks correct, because you don't notice that it's tilted or curved or whatever. So make sure you're typing those out yourself using the keys on the keyboard right beside the enter key. Don't copy and paste from a Word editor and have that issue. I'm not sure if that's an issue with Eclipse or not, but that is an extremely valuable piece of information, because me and I'm sure millions of other people have had that issue before. So keep that in mind. Now, that's all I'm going to cover for day 1, but I don't just want to leave you at that, because the only way you're really going to get better at this stuff is if you practice. So we're going to have some little bit of homework today. I forgot to cover the other data types though. Integers, those are just single numbers. So 5 is an integer. Anytime you put a dot, that's no like a .0 or what, that's not an integer anymore. That becomes a floating point number, and there's 2 types. We got float and we got double. Really, you should pretty much use double in all situations. Float just has less memory, which makes it a higher likelihood of causing rounding errors and issues with math. So highly recommend you use double. And here's what that's gonna look like. You would just say something like double D, double D. We'll just go with 5.5. Get rid of that other one there and get rid of that dot. And what we're gonna do is we're just going to output D. Run that. Oh, I always forget to save. 5.5. So that is a double. You could also do float, that'll work. But there's no really convincing reason on why you should use float. And you can see there's an error. So if that happens, you can go to this problems tab and it says type mismatch, cannot convert from double to float. So it's basically saying this is a double and you're trying to convert it to float. If you don't want it to do that, I think you put an F at the end. There you go. So now you're explicitly saying, hey, I know I put a valid double, but I want to force it to be a float. So we're just going to put the F at the end. So yes. So what is your homework? Make sure you understand all of these data types. And inside of my Java series, make sure you watch any videos on any of the pieces I didn't clearly discuss. So anything from video 2 up to video 11. We haven't really gotten into 12 and on, so anything in that first 10 video range, make sure you understand at least the basics. And if there's two I could call out to extra pay attention to, would be 3 and 4. Those are kind of like the building layer that we're going to build on top. It's the foundation. And you really want to understand how things are structured and arguments and parameters and methods and all these keywords if you want to become a great Java developer. If you want to be a decent Java developer, you don't have to necessarily know all that information, but I don't want to be decent, right? I want to be great. So that is what I recommend for you guys today. And also, please leave a comment because I want to know what specific things in Java you want me to cover in this series. I doubt every episode is going to be this long, but I had a lot to cover in this video. So stay tuned for day 2 and be sure to subscribe and check back 8 a.m. tomorrow. Peace out.